Now you've mastered the drawing tools, it's time to start getting things moving. It's time to start animating. An animation is really just a series of images that are shown to your viewer fast enough so that they kind of blur together and it seems like a continuous smooth movement. Now for you to be successful with your animations, you need to understand what's going on down here in the timeline. The timeline represents the images that your viewer is going to see. Each one of these little boxes down here is called a frame. A number of frames together make up an animation. If you click on the background of your animation and head over to the properties on the right hand side, you'll see a value for FPS, frames per second. And by default, Flash is set to animate at 24 frames per second. This is about the slowest you can go before your viewer would start to see things flickering. Instead of looking like a smooth animation, things would start to look like a series of still pictures. Anything above about 20 to 25 frames per second should look pretty smooth. So 24 is a good value. Now coming back to the timeline, that means that from frame 1 to frame 24 is 1 second's worth of time. Up to frame 48, we've got another second, and so on. Every 24 frames represents 1 second of time. Now, if you look at our timeline at the moment, it's pretty empty. There's not much going on. In fact, the only frame that has anything on it is frame 1. The black dot here indicates that frame 1 has a keyframe. A keyframe is a point in the animation where something happens. And in this case, that something is the fact we've drawn a picture on frame 1. So we say that frame 1 is a keyframe, and because the black dot here is solid, that means we've drawn something on it. I can preview our animation by holding down the command key and pressing enter. And what you'll see here is nothing really. We can see our drawing, but nothing's actually animating because all we're seeing is frame 1 being repeated over and over again. By default, Flash will loop your animation, so it will show all the frames and then go back to the first one once it's finished. We've only got 1 frame, so we're just seeing that over and over again. So let's make something happen. We'll make another keyframe at frame 24. So this means that for 1 second, nothing's going to happen. We get to frame 24, and then we'll make something start to move. You insert a keyframe by right-clicking, Insert Keyframe. All right, so a couple of things have happened. We've got our new keyframe at frame 24. You'll notice that the drawing we had on frame 1 has been copied to our new keyframe. So what we've got here is an exact copy of what was on the previous keyframe on frame 1. The other thing to notice is that we've got this grey area here between frame 1 and frame 24. This grey area means nothing's going on. There's no movement, there's no changes, there's no animation. All of these frames here will be exactly the same as the last keyframe, frame 1. So we've got a drawing here, and nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, and then we get to frame 24. If I leave this object exactly where it is, then we've got an animation that doesn't do anything. But what I can do now is on this keyframe, I can move this slightly. So if I put my rocket up a little bit, if I slide this slider back, you can see nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, and then the rocket moves upwards slightly. So let's keep that going. If I insert another keyframe right next to the last one, because at this point I want my animation to be smooth. If I leave a gap, there's going to be a pause. It's going to stutter. If I put the next keyframe right next to this one, and once again, it's made a copy of what was on the previous keyframe here. It's made a copy. It's already highlighted for me. I can pick it up and I can move it up a little bit. I'll do the same again, another keyframe, and we'll shift this up, and so on. I'm getting a bit higher each time because my rocket's accelerating off into space. And our last one. Now we're off the screen now, so what I can actually do is just hit delete. We can get rid of the rocket because it's off the screen. If you look at what just happened to the keyframe there, you'll notice that we've got a circle. That means there's a keyframe, but it's empty. So all the other keyframes have got a drawing on. This keyframe has got no drawing. It's still a keyframe, but there's nothing actually drawn on that frame. So if I preview this now, if I do Command Enter, you'll see for 1 second nothing happens, then our rocket takes off. Now it's immediately looping back to the start. We probably want to have a bit of a pause, a bit of a delay. So as the rocket takes off, it goes off the screen. We can wait for a couple of seconds and then come back to the start again. So to do that, I head back to my timeline. 2 seconds is roughly 50 frames. We're on frame 30 here. So if I head up to frame 80 here, now what I'm going to insert is not a keyframe, it's a normal frame. Because I don't want anything to happen at this point. I just want to put a load of blank frames in that are copies of the last keyframe. You'll see we've got a normal frame here. The square just means it's the last frame of that block. So here's our keyframe, there's nothing on it, and these are copies of the last keyframe. They're blank as well. But it means we're going to have a 2 second delay before Flash loops us back to frame 1 here, and it starts all over again. Let's see how that looks. So Command Enter. It starts, 1 second, takes off, 2 seconds delay, back to the start again. So the speed of what you're seeing there is controlled by you. It's controlled by where you put your keyframes, how big the gaps are between them, how close together you put the steps in your animation. You've got complete control over this timeline. And it's kind of mastering the timeline, it's understanding how it works, that allows you to produce the animation that you want.